Welcome to a special report. I'm Dean Ryan, host of Truth Be Told. I'm joined today with the great James Fetzer, world-renowned researcher. And if you're joining us today, you're recovering from the New Year's Eve and all the holidays of 2016. So Happy New Year to everybody. Currently, we're speaking and putting this together because we have a World War III scenario looming on the borders of Russia. We have reports coming from the Sun newspaper that Obama has special forces right along the border of Putin's Russia. We have also reports of Vladimir Putin sending nuclear missiles, tanks on the borders of Lithuania, and we have NATO ready to respond to a ballistic Vladimir Putin, if you will. Jim, this is just an incredible time. The last report we did, they were kind of poking the bear there in Russia, trying to get Putin to kick out 35 diplomats, which he balked, and actually invited them to celebrate New Year's at the Kremlin. So where are we now? Because the reports I'm reading across all newspapers seem to me a major conflict coming, which will then Barack Obama to stay in office or create some kind of crises as we get closer to the Donald Trump inauguration of January 20.
There have been a number of damaging revelations that, stuff many of us have reported on before, such as that ISIS was made in the USA. Actually, Judicial Watch was able to obtain documents from the Defense Intelligence Agency showing that they created ISIS in 2012. When Hillary was Secretary of State, Obama, of course, president. It's now been confirmed by a new leaked audio in which John Kerry acknowledges that the United States was responsible for creating ISIS, that the only objective of Obama was regime change, that to accomplish the White House was willing to nurture the rise of ISIS, and to facilitate that he was willing to give arms to ISIS and even to attack a Syrian government military convoy, killing 80 Syrian soldiers. Hillary, of course, we know, provided weapons from the Libyan stockpile, as WikiLeaks has revealed. We also know now, Dean, that John Brennan has been a Saudi mole as our director of the CIA, and that he's doing everything he can to prevent Trump from assuming the presidency on the 20th of January, because he's aided by Lieutenant General Michael Flynn, now retired, who is his national security advisor, who's aware that Brennan is a Saudi mole. He doesn't want them to get into a position of power where they could do something about it. And Brennan, Dean, was responsible for getting this meme out of Russian hacking, which has no substance whatsoever. There was no Russian hacking. Our voting machines aren't connected to the internet, so that wasn't even technically possible. And Craig Murray, who was in multiple roles as the former intelligence analyst, British ambassador, Uzbekistan, chancellor of the University of Dundee, has acknowledged being the intermediary who took the DNC leaks, the emails, from a DNC source and gave them to Julian Assange. And Julian was just on last night with Sean Hannity in a completely fascinating, brilliant interview where he explained very, very lucidly Russia had nothing to do with this, but they're trying to promote the Russian meme in order to justify Obama giving the boot to the 35 diplomats, where Putin skillfully stepped out of the trap he had thereby laid by not retaliating in kind, but instead inviting the diplomats and their kids to a holiday event in the Kremlin. And now, Dean, as you're reporting, they're building up, trying to create a military provocation, and I have no doubt the objective is to justify Barack Obama remaining for a third term in office by declaring martial law as a necessity of national security.
Jim, I want to just take it back real quick to the Kerry leaked tape. And I did listen to that, and it was very interesting. Listening to that was almost like going back 15 years in the war rooms when the Bush administration was trying to find any which way evidence to link WMDs and Al-Qaeda to Saddam Hussein. The same thing, same formula here. Listening to that video, you hear Kerry and the advisors I believe, talking to NATO or CFR members, trying to link any collateral damage to Russia and trying to poke and almost guarantee that the damage did come from them on civilians alone. But moving forward, with the Julian Assange interview with Sean Hannity the other evening, Julian Assange eloquently stated that the way Obama is speaking, and if people watch Obama's recent press conferences, he's not indicting Russia, but he's almost scathing on and skirt telling that it could be Russia that hacked into the U.S., not saying it was and it is. So there's very lawyer attorney type kind of linguistics going on here on the American
To whom are you attributing that view?
Well, Assange was saying that Obama, when he's speaking
Russian see how Obama's trying to weave a narrative that implies without asserting that Russia was involved, but there's no evidence for it whatsoever. In fact, we have a whole host of experts who deny it, including Robert David Steele, who is a former CIA Marine Corps intelligence officer, has become a big-time whistleblower, explaining that all this is complete and utter crap. It explains a reason why Trump has not been eager to get briefings from the CIA, because they were going to feed him propaganda, disinformation. Very wise on his part. It now turns out, Dean, and this is a motive in the background, that the U.S. Appeals Court has reversed a decision on the Clinton email lawsuit that is going to require John Kerry to ask the Attorney General for help in recovering more emails from Hillary Clinton's private server. That was a necessary legal step that they had circumvented by simply not having John Kerry make the request. The court has now, in essence, directed him to do that, which means that all the Pizzagate revelations are coming out now, and would you believe in their hysteria to avoid the idea that they had anything to do with that? They're even claiming that the Russians planted child porn on their computers, Dean. This is ridiculous beyond absurdity.
It really is, Jim. It's 2 + 2 = 5. We have a fake liberal consensus that, to me, is not liberal at all. This is authoritarianism. This is neoliberalism. This is neoconservatism disguised by the social engineers, the elites. But going back to pushing this Russian narrative, this is such a dangerous time because now we have all of Hollywood double downing in pursuing and pressuring Congress to prevent the Trump administration from happening, and almost, Jim, almost wishing a JFK type of assassination scenario would take place at this point, because it really looks like they're out of cards to play in this poker game here.
What
Jim,
they
are we going to see something?
But they are as completely out of their minds. They never thought that the massively corrupt Democratic National Committee would be outed. And of course, when the revelations came through WikiLeaks that they'd sabotaged Bernie Sanders' campaign, that doesn't seem to have made a dent in their consciousness of the degree of corruption of Hillary Clinton. The whole thing was rigged. There's no evidence of any Russian interference, but there's massive evidence that it was rigged for Hillary Clinton. And where in Michigan, for example, they found there were precincts that had voted 95% for Hillary were found to have vast numbers of ballots added after the polls closed. And in Detroit, Dean, which voted overwhelmingly for Clinton, 2/3 of the precincts did not match those of the voting machine printout, which means more than half of the votes for Hillary could be fraudulent. And where I interviewed Richard Charnon about this, and he became convinced that the whole election had been rigged for Hillary, but there was such a massive turnout for Trump they weren't able to pull it off, but that at least 7 states had been given to Hillary that properly belonged to Trump, including New Hampshire, Colorado, and Nevada.
Jim, let me ask you this question. We're looking at a potential scenario of Obama declaring a 3rd term. And if people look at their history, FDR kind of did the same thing, that presidents can declare wartime emergencies to do such things. I want to ask you this: in the event that this happens, are we going to see a major revolt in the United States of America?
Well, I think it's entirely probable that something would happen that would be very, very unpleasant, that we'd have an outbreak of a civil war in the country. You know, Sheriff Joe Arpaio from Arizona has just confirmed the forensic analysis of Obama's birth certificate as being a forgery. Believe it or not, his own attorneys admit that it's forged, but say eligibility is a different matter. I had long since determined his Hawaiian birth certificate was a forgery. Years ago on a show I did at radiofetzer.blogspot.com, but also discovered what appears to be his legitimate Kenyan birth certificate, where they even created a second so they could attempt to debunk it. And would you believe, on Bill Still, he's now had someone came forward who was at Harvard with Obama. And during the conversation they had, when the question of entrance or admission came up, Obama claimed to be from Kenya and said he only got in because he was born in Kenya and moved to Hawaii when he was little, and that was how he was able to gain admission. I'm telling you, the American people becoming conscious of the degree of fakery and fabrication of Barack Obama, they're not going to want any more of this man in the White House, that's for sure.
Well, let me just add to that, Jim. You know, when all the WikiLeaks were coming out, and we sure did a good job covering that as best we could, I always kind of wondered, how come we didn't see really anything on Barack Obama? It was really all Hillary. Now, after seeing the Assange interview, which, by the way, it's good to know he's still alive, it's now interesting that the word on the street is we're going to see some major damning WikiLeaks emails on Obama, his collusion with Hillary, and Obama, Hillary Clinton, CIA, black ops to sell arms to ISIS, to grow ISIS, to rename Al-Qaeda ISIS, and to destabilize all the Middle East. Not only that, Jim, we're going to see even more child trafficking, more red herrings all over across the board and anomalies. So you think that's something we're going to see as we get closer to the inauguration and we see the attempt of Obama and Hillary to steal this away from the Donald?
I think Assange has a backbone of steel. He's going to release these additional damning revelations. We already know that Barack Obama was deeply involved in Pizzagate too. Also, Nancy Pelosi, who has her own Goats Hill pizzeria out in San Francisco, where I was just sent a photograph from the inside of the pizzeria, and it's just coated. The walls are coated with letters and drawings by little kids. Not exactly what you'd expect when you go to a pizzeria. I believe these aging women believe that they receive rejuvenation by drinking the blood of children. It's that bad. It is that bad, Dean.
Well, let's touch upon that. We were going to close it off by this interview or report rather right now, but since you brought up Nancy Pelosi and you talk about a woman that just looks like a demonic blood-sucking figure there in the Bay Area. So you're telling me, Jim, that there is a Pizzagate galore looming on the edge here right there in San Francisco with Nancy Pelosi?
This Pizzagate thing, where this is only the American franchise of a worldwide pedophile ring, mind you, but it's going to turn out to be the greatest scandal in American political history. Of that, I have no doubt. And Barack Obama, John Podesta, his brother Tony, Hillary are all going to be at the center of it. We already have a revelation from WikiLeaks of that, quote, Obama spent about $65,000 flying in pizza / dogs from Chicago for a private party at the White House. In case anyone is unaware, the White House does not allow food to be brought into the building from outside sources to circumvent the possibility of poisoning. It would be absurd to be transporting honest-to-God pizza pies or honest-to-God hot dogs from Chicago to the White House. That's so ridiculous. It's unbelievable. But when you understand the code they're using here, they're talking about flying in little girls and little boys to be sexually exploited in the White House. This is the most disgusting story you will have ever heard.
Well, let me add to this, Jim, because I found it very interesting, and we've covered Pizzagate here, and some of the big wigs in the alternative industry, or alternative news rather, have totally dropped the ball on this. Kurt Haskell's made the case that some of the people that will no longer cover it have been threatened major lawsuits behind the scenes. And that is a good possibility, but we cannot let this Pizzagate just be a thing of 2016 and forgotten about. If somebody like Nancy Pelosi, the grandmother type, is involved in these things, we can only assume that some of the big media heads, some of the big entertainers of our time, and even some in all media across the board have some finger or involvement or some form of knowledge of Pizzagate. Can we not?
Yes, yes, yes. Let me give you a double litmus test. Anyone who denies Pizzagate or who affirms Russian hacking is operating on the wrong side, either deliberately or out of incompetence.
Absolutely. I mean, I look at people like Michael Moore and I see a shill to high heaven. I look at people like Rachel Maddow. I mean, these people are CIA crisis actors at best.
William Colby told us the agency owns everyone of significance in the major media. And if it was true then, it's much worse today. I agree. The whole MSNBC lineup is just festered. CNN, I mean, Anderson Cooper, Wolf Blitz are all long affiliated with the CIA. For those who are unacquainted with Pizzagate, let me recommend two sources. There's a YouTube video, #Pizzagate, What We Know So Far, that's simply excellent. You can find it there, several versions, and that includes the email revelation about Obama spending $65,000. Another is DC Pizzagate, updated 12/24. It may have been updated yet again into the new year, but that's an excellent extension. Between those two, you get a very good broad introduction to Pizzagate.
Right, and let me just tell the audience that the CIA infiltration doesn't just stop at CNN or Fox or major mainstream media. It has infiltrated the alternative media as well. And Jim, we'll have to do a special on that sometime because there's a lot that people don't know about alternative media and only speculate on. But I can assure you, Jim, and our audience that major alternative media realms have been infiltrated by some major shills and some form of intelligence, influential people. But we'll do another special on that. But I want to end it here, Jim, because this is developing, and we just want to keep people up to date because this story is changing constantly. So,
just to add a final note, as Paul Craig Roberts, our nation's leading public intellectual, has observed, as a coup against Trump has failed, the threats against his life rises. That they were unable to deny him the Republican nomination. They were unable to deny him victory in the election. The vote recount failed. The Electoral College failed. But the efforts continue. And what we're seeing and reporting on now are some of the last desperate measures of a corrupt administration to save itself, to retain its power, and to prevent itself from becoming the subject of criminal investigation, prosecution, conviction, and punishment.
Absolutely. And we'll end it right there, Jim. And I want to thank the audience for joining this Truth Be Told special report. Please subscribe to this channel, share it. You can follow Jim's great work at, was it Moonrock Books?
Moonrockbooks.com, sure. JamesFetzer.blogspot.com. The Raw Deal on Rents Radio, Tuesdays and Thursdays.
And I need to promote that more, Jim. So you got to keep on me on that. It's just, it's such an incredible time. So, we will be following this story. Obviously, we're going to be having reports around the clock the closer we get to the inauguration and shortly after. And then we're going to resume the full show here of Truth Be Told when I get done from my road series. And, of course, follow Jim and all his great work. And we will catch you on the other side. Thank you for joining us.